These lenses are all from Canon, and in this video I will talk about the pros, cons, limitations, and compatibility for each of these lenses when using the Canon EOS R. This will give you a better understanding on how this camera works. So on the left there is a dedicated 35mm RF lens for the Canon EOS R, an EF 70-40mm full-frame zoom lens in the middle, and an EFS crop lens, the 18-135mm zoom lens on the right. Each of these has some pros and cons that I encountered while using this EOS R system in the past 5 months. So I want to discuss them with you, and not only that, I want you to comment below and bring your opinions and your feedback to the community regarding the subject. You may already know that the Canon EOS R is a mirrorless camera, and it has a new line of RF lenses. They are not cheap, but you can feel a big step up in the overall quality and sharpness of the images if you will use them. The RF lenses have this new customizable ring that allows the user to link different functions, like for example the ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and exposure compensation. While using an RF lens in photo mode, you will benefit of the 30.3 megapixel sensor, which is great. In video mode, you can shoot in 720p at 120 frames per second, in 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and in 4K up to 30 frames per second. The EOS R is a full frame camera, but when shooting in 4K, it will introduce a 1.6 crop. For some of you, this may be a big con, like for me, and for others, it's not a big deal, and I will explain why in this video. One of the most important cons of the RF lenses is the fact that they cannot be mounted on a full frame or crop sensor DSLR camera, at least at this point, and I'm not sure if they can create an adapter. So tell me your opinion about this. Are you upset that you're limited in using the RF lenses with the EOS R and the EOS RP cameras, or do you think that this is a good step forward for Canon? Anyways, I will make a short review of this 35mm RF lens very soon, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to watch it. Also, all the RF lenses connect to the EOS R body directly. I'm saying this because when you buy this camera, it comes in the box with an adapter. And this adapter allows you to connect full frame and crop lenses to the EOS R and RP. So let's take the next example with a full frame EF lens, the 17-40mm f4. You put the adapter on, which by the way doesn't have any glass inside. It just keeps the EF and EFS lenses further away from the sensor because they are constructed in a different way. With this full frame lens, you still benefit from the 30.3 megapixels in photo mode and all the video specifications like you were using an RF lens, up to 120 frames per second in 720p, 60 frames per second in 1080p, and 30 frames per second in 4K mode with a 1.6 crop, of course. Here are the downsides when using an EF lens on the EOS R camera. The whole setup becomes longer and a bit heavier because the adapter and of course the lack of the customizable ring from the RF line could represent an issue for some of you. A big pro is the fact that the focus speed is not affected when using the adapter, and also the object tracking and the eye tracking are working really well. And now let's take the third example with the 18-135mm EFS crop lens. If you want to attach one to the EOS R or EOS RP, you need the adapter of course, but there are some major things that made me sad for a while, but now I just accept them and move on with my life. So in photo mode, when using a lens like this, the image will be cropped by 1.6 and you cannot change that. You will not have 30.3 megapixel photos anymore. Instead, you will end up with a 11.6 megapixel shots, just like the majority of the smartphone cameras, right? Anyways, the technical quality of the photos is still better than on a smartphone because the sensor size and the lens that you are using are far more important than the megapixels. Still, I appreciate the fact that Canon allows me to put a crop lens onto the EOS R, but photographers, be aware of this. And there is more to speak about when shooting video with a crop lens. First of all, you will not be able to record at 60 frames per second in 1080p. Why is that? I don't know. It could be something that involves the crop mode on the sensor, but I'm not sure, so please be kind and offer an explanation down in the comments. It will help me and also other EOS R users. And I mentioned earlier that the 1.6 crop in 4K will not be an issue for some users. And here is why. If you're using the Canon EOS R with the crop lens for video recording, the only downside will be that you cannot record in 1080p at 60 frames per second. But in the same time, the image that you will see in 720p and 1080p will be already cropped. So when recording in 4K, there will be no additional crop, and I think this is a big advantage. People may come to the new EOS R system from crop sensor cameras, like for example the 80D or the 90D. And their advantage on the Canon EOS R will be things like C-Log, improved eye tracking autofocus with the newest firmware, and lower noise at higher ISO, due to the fact that the EOS R is a full-frame camera with a bigger sensor. Another big advantage is that they can use a lens like this, the 18 to 135mm, which is not so expensive, but when used in combination with the EOS R, it can offer pretty good results. So, if 60 frames per second is not necessary to you, will that be enough for you and other people to switch to the EOS R? Anyways, leave me a comment. I'm Chris, and thanks for watching.